Welcome to Theology with Coffee. I'm Kelsan Wolverton.
I'm Taylor Wood, and this is where we have casual conversations about deep biblical truth.
If you enjoy this content, hit the like button.
If you really enjoy it, subscribe and tell your friends where they can find us.
So grab your Bible, something to write with, a cup of coffee, and let's include a friend too, because it's time to dive into the Word.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We are excited that you are here for another episode of Revelation chapter 18. We are trying to get a better schedule together and make sure we can get all of these episodes done and finish off the book of Revelation.
Yep.
And here we are, getting near the finish line now at chapter 18.
I know. It's so close and yet so far.
Yeah.
Because you never know with us. We might... Well, we're hoping to just do this in one take, but it could be a part two.
Yeah.
We'll I guess you'll just find out. Eventually, yeah.
We'll see. Chapter 18 is long, but it deals with several themes get repeated. So we'll just kind of see how it goes and see what happens. And of course, since we're coming near the end of the book of Revelation, we'll also be looking at other episodes to do. And so we'll be announcing pretty soon what our next study will be on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right. Well, do you have anything to say before we kind of get started with this episode?
All I'm going to say with chapter 18 is John just writes this beautifully well. And we've talked about this a lot, especially in Revelation, about Hebrew numerology, which is numbers and how they're significant and how they repeat. And I will say this, in chapter 18 specifically, you're going to see a lot of sets of threes that equal 6, which I think is going to be very profound in how John writes. And I wonder if he actually knows, well, he does. He knows what exactly he's doing because of the Spirit. And so for me, it kind of blew my mind, because there is going to be lots of threes that equal to 6, then so on to things of 7 times 4 to equal 28 and yada, 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 yada. But I just would like to say, just keep those things out, highlight it, mark it in your journal or in your Bible, because I think those things are very important.
How cool. Well, I'm excited to get into that and for you to reveal some of those number patterns that show up in this chapter. Fantastic. All right. Well, we are, as I said, we're near the end of the book of Revelation, and we're in this section here towards the end where there's a series of pictures. Yeah. We're really dealing with the final climactic events. This chapter that we're reading, if we're constructing a chronology of sort of end times eschatology, this is something that is a chapter written in response to the final defeat of the empire, of this end times empire of Babylon, the empire of the beast, which we talked about in the previous episode. I say that because in chapter 19, we get the arrival of the rider of the white horse. However, I do think there's a little bit of looping back that occurs. Did I say 17 or 19?
You said 17, right?
Okay, no. 19, the rider on the white horse arrives.
Yes.
I think there's some looping back, because I think some of the events we're going to be reading in 19 are things that happen before the fall of Babylon. I don't think Babylon falls before the rider on the white horse arrives. And the battle that the rider on the white horse fights is a battle that the book of Revelation has already discussed multiple times. So all of these are sort of like snapshots of the fall of the beastly empire. So don't read this as a strict chronology, but read this as different pictures of the exact same event that are being repeated through this section of chapters 17 through 19. What I'm going to do with this chapter is I'm going to take this section by section. We're going to get this kind of song section of this series of choruses. And I'm going to take this little bit by little bit, and we'll discuss each of these little sections. This reminds me of classical plays, where between major sections of the classical plays, you would have the chorus lines show up, sometimes represented as the muses, sometimes represented as just characters in the background, but a lot of times they would sing these songs that would then describe the events or describe the theme of the play or the story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're getting here. So we're getting this musical section here in the book of Revelation that's going to explain this. And since it's a musical section, I've asked Kelsa to sing the entirety of chapter 18. So go ahead.
No.
Oh, okay. Just playing.
We'll get AI to do it.
I surprised her
No,
with
I'm
that.
kidding.
There's an idea. We probably have enough of your voice recorded that we could get an AI version of you singing a song.
Yeah. It could happen.
All right. Well, before we get too distracted, let me read through. I'm going to read the first 3 verses here.
Okay.
After this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was made bright with his glory. And he called out with a mighty voice, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become the dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. For all nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living." So let's pause there and let's talk about this first chorus that is sung here at the fall of Babylon. I think that there is a not 0% chance that the mighty angel who appears here is in fact Jesus Christ, the Son of God. I say that because of a couple of references here. He talks about this mighty angel coming from heaven, and he talks about the great authority of this angel.
Yeah.
Well, in the very next chapter, we're going to see the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, who has the greatest of authority, arriving from heaven and bringing with him the downfall and the destruction of the Babylonian Empire. And then we also have the fact that the entire earth is filled with his glory, is filled with the brightness of his glory.
Yeah.
One of the very last images of Revelation we get of the new heaven and new earth is the fact that no sun is required because the glory of the Lord fills the entire earth.
Right.
To me, this mighty, authoritative, glorious angel that appears could be the Son of God, and this actually could be basically another version of the arrival of the rider on the white horse that we're going to get in chapter 19. Any thoughts on that?
No, that makes sense because I was trying to think of where is it? Where we talked about there was another passage in Revelation where it doesn't ever say Jesus specifically, but you and I agreed that it was probably Jesus who says it because it said he had a mighty voice and had authority. And I'm trying to remember where that was at.
I believe it was the harvesting angel.
Is it the harp? Yeah.
Oh, if you want to talk, I might try and look. Yeah, chapter 14.
Yes. There we go. Yeah, chapter 14, verse 14. Seated on the cloud with one like the Son of Man with the golden crown on his head.
Yeah.
And the sickle. Yes. Which I could see that tying in exactly with here in Revelation chapter 18.
And we talked about this before. Remember, angel is not a statement of being.
Right.
It is it's a job description.
Mm-hmm.
An angel is a messenger. Sometimes angels are human. Sometimes angels are divine. But an angel does not imply that you are lesser than God. Again, angel is a job description, which is why we both believe in the Old Testament. The angel of the Lord is also the second person of the Trinity.
Right.
And so this would not be the first time that the Son of God is referred to as an angel. Again, if that language bothers you, think of it in terms of a messenger. His job is to bring this message of the downfall of Babylon. And there is no messenger who would have greater authority than the one true Word of God, the Son of God, Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. And then I thought this was interesting too. I don't know if John is echoing Isaiah 21:9, which is a prophetic word announcing, an angel comes, does a prophetic word announcing the death of the Babylonian Empire in 8th century. And so I think John is going back to even that of here is, as we talked about the last episode of Babylonian, is could be some type of city. It could also be the people, the empire. But in the same way, we're seeing the fallen of Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
And John is echoing that, I think, in Isaiah.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Babylon in the Old Testament represents the wealthiest and most powerful version of human achievement.
Mm-hmm.
It is what humans are capable of without the intervention of God.
Yeah.
They are capable of incredible wealth, incredible power, but they are also capable of incredible wickedness.
Mm-hmm.
And the book of Daniel, we talked about this the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
The book of Daniel and Daniel's vision, or Nebuchadnezzar's vision of the statue, the Empire of Babylon is portrayed as the greatest human empire, and every human empire that comes after it will decline in glory.
Mm-hmm.
John is writing about this future Babylon as being something that recaptured the glory of the original Babylon, but is still very wicked and vicious, as we saw in chapter 17 and as we're going to see in this chapter, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely think Isaiah 21:9 is rattling around there in John's head as he writes this section. So we get this song or this oracle spoken by this mighty angel, which may be the Son of God. Here, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place of demons and a haunt for every unclean spirit. The reference to demons and unclean spirits here is probably going to surprise most readers. The demons in the sort of realm of the Old Testament demonology, demons were said to dwell in the wilderness, the desert places, the places outside of the camp. These are the places where demons held particular sway. So on just a surface level, and I think there's some deeper things we can say about this, but just at a surface level, this is talking about the fact that Babylon, which was the paragon of human civilization, has now become this chaotic wilderness that is now controlled by the ultimate agents of chaos, who are the demonic spirits, the unclean spirits that realm those places of darkness and of chaos in the world.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
I think that was really good.
It says it's a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. And again, these birds and beasts, you think of carrion birds, you think of scavenger beasts, things like vultures, things like hyenas, things like jackals, wild dogs.
Yeah.
These are the kind of creatures that inhabit the ruins of once great empires, once great cities. It's laying out a vision for us in which the great city of Babylon, which represented all of humanity's wealth and achievement, has now been abandoned by civilization and left over to these birds and beasts and unclean spirits and things like this. This is another indication that I do not believe that Babylon is a representation of Jerusalem.
Right.
Because we're going to find in chapter 20 that Jerusalem becomes the sort of the seat of the new Messianic kingdom. Jerusalem is where the new Eden begins to grow across the earth.
Yeah.
And so this empire of Babylon is not Jerusalem, even though the final battle is fought at Jerusalem and the forces of Babylon will be defeated at Jerusalem. I think this is a separate place. This is a separate area. I think it lays out a vision also for us of a little bit of speculation here, but in the time of the millennium, you're going to have all of God's goodness and glory, and the greatness of the Messianic kingdom is centered in Jerusalem. And Eden will spread from there. You will have this Edenic ideal that is spreading across the earth, and its epicenter will be the city of Jerusalem. But even through all of that, you're going to have, during the millennium, this place where the seat of Babylon used to be, that is sort of the last holdout of chaos before the new heavens and the new earth and the heavenly Jerusalem comes out of the heavenly realm. Any thoughts on that?
No, that makes complete sense. I was gonna say, here is our first set of 3.
Okay.
So
Give it to us.
A haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, and a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. So there's your 3. And Also, I had a commentator mentioned back to Isaiah 13:21-22 about unclean birds, unclean beasts, detestable stuff.
Mhm.
So going back to foreshadow of that
And
one.
by the way, unclean birds and unclean beasts, these may also be pictures of demonic spirits. Oftentimes, these creatures are used in ancient literature to depict these spirits of chaos that roam the world. Verse 3 tells us that all the nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living. This is going to kind of give us a framework for the rest of the chapter, as the chapter is going to give these laments by the kings and by the merchants because of what they've lost as a result of the fall of Babylon. This is also a reminder of chapter 17, where we see this worldwide government, this worldwide dominion that the beast and the king of the beast held. And very likely the kings of the earth that it is referencing here, it is those very same 10 kings that is referenced in chapter 17, who for a time give their authority over to the beastly king, the Antichrist, for him to wage war against God. This number 10 does not have to be a literal number. It is just the representation, I think, of all of the world governments that existed before, that gave their power and have some level of existence after the fall of Babylon, after the rider on the white horse arrives at this point. I'll also remind you, in the previous episode, I talked about how these kings could be a reference to humans.
Right.
They could be a reference to Psalm 82, the sons of God, the fallen watchers who have their rulership over the world, and now their rulership has been broken because of their because they cast their lot in with the beast. It could also be these are Nephilim rulers who arrived. These are future rulers, Nephilim kings, that are sort of these quasi-divine, quasi-human kings. Unclear who exactly these figures are, other than that they are representatives of the whatever governmental power is left among humans after the fall of the great Antichrist empire. They are the dregs. They are the leftovers of that.
Yeah.
Right? To me, this actually has some interesting implications on the nature of the millennium. We're going to talk in more detail about the millennium when we get to chapter 20 and the passage that deals with the millennium. But, you have debates over premillennialism, amillennialism, postmillennialism. You have all these different views on these different things. And we'll give our views in chapter 20 and why we defend those particular views. But it is interesting that John is implying that there is something left incomplete by the return of Christ. So Jesus returns, Babylon's power is broken, and yet there are still these kings, there are still these figures who allied themselves with the beast and are left to mourn the fall of the beast. This is rather reflective of Daniel chapter 7, where you have, in Daniel chapter 7, you have 4 beasts. You have 3 beasts that arise first. You have the 4th beast that arises. The 4th beast is slain. But there's this interesting statement in Daniel chapter 7 that talks about how the 3 first beasts are still there and are allowed to exist and continue for a time, even after the 4th beast has been slain.
Yeah.
Apparently, even after the return of Christ, during the millennium, there is still going to be some sort of a human government left over, a secular government left over, in which there is still this work that needs to be done in order to reclaim the earth. Perhaps that is what the millennium, the 1,000 years, is for. It is for the reclaiming now of these kingdoms, of these nations that are still left after the fall of the beast. And this passage, again, seems to be implying that there's some sort of chaos, some sort of distress, some sort of rebellion that still exists even after the return of Jesus Christ and the fall of the beastly kingdom. What do you think of that idea?
No, that's really fascinating. I never really have thought about that before. But it does leave, like, as you mentioned, that there's something still missing.
Well, it certainly presupposes a premillennial viewpoint.
Right.
And again, we'll get into that here whenever we get to chapter 20. But to me, it at least is fascinating because it tells us a little bit of what the nature of the millennial kingdom is going to look like if you accept a premillennial reading. I haven't thought enough about this to figure out what you would do with this passage under an amillennial or a post-millennial understanding, although I have a pretty good idea where those theologians would go. And so we'll probably talk about that when we get to the millennium.
Yeah.
All right. So that brings us to verse 4.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
real
yeah,
quick.
go ahead.
Ready? Another set of 3. Here we go. For all the nations have drunk the wine of her sexual immorality. Number 2, the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her. And number 3, the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living, which 3 plus 3 equals 6.
Mm-hmm.
So we
And
have
that's the end of this first speech.
Yep. And complete.
Yeah. One other thing, this reference to the sexual immorality, I believe we talked about this when we talked about the scarlet and harlot. Sorry, the harlot and scarlet. That's weird. This reference to the sexual immorality, I interpret this as idolatry and the adoption of these false religions
Absolutely.
that the beast brings.
Yeah.
Oftentimes in the Old Testament, idolatry is closely associated with adultery, with unfaithfulness, and so the kings participating in the sexual immorality of Babylon. This is a reference to them taking on the religious system of Babylon in order to participate in the economic system of Babylon.
Yeah.
The mark of the beast. This is another reference to the idea of the mark of the beast and what's going on there, right? Okay, going on in verse 4. Then I heard another voice from heaven. Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues. For her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion for her in the cup she mixed. As she glorified herself and lived in luxury, so give her a like measure of torment and mourning. Since in her heart she says, I sit as a queen, I am no widow, and mourning I shall never see. For this reason, her plagues will come in a single day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire. For mighty is the Lord God who has judged her. So, verse 4, we get another voice speaking from heaven. And just as I think that there is a non-0% chance that the first voice, the first speaker in this passage is God the Son, I think there's a non-0% chance that this is God the Father who speaks here, especially since the first thing that this voice says is come out of her, my people. And so I think I would lean towards interpreting that you have God the Son first speak, and now you have God the Father speaking and calling to his people to come out of Babylon. And I think what we're getting here, again, think of the chorus line of a classical play.
Yeah.
Where we now have the characters of the play kind of stepping outside of the universe and communicating directly to the audience what the expectation is for them. So here we have the visions of Revelation being paused and God himself speaking to the audience, us, the faithful people, and saying, this is what's going to happen to Babylon, so come out of Babylon. Do not participate in the system of Babylon that is present even in the world today, that demands your allegiance, demands your faithfulness over and against faithfulness to me. And I think God is warning of the judgment that's coming and calling his people to cast aside the influence of Babylon. What do you have to say here about this set of verses?
We do see another 3 sets that equal 6. And so that would be verse 6. We say, pay her back. She herself has paid back others. Repay her double for her deeds, and mix a double portion for her in the cup she mixed. So that's a 3. And then also at the very end of verse 8, we have, for this reason, her plagues will come in a single day, death, mourning, and famine,
Mm-hmm.
which equals 6. So
It's like a waltz. 1, 2, 3.
Yes,
1, 2, 3. There's a
Mhm.
rhythm
there's
to
a rhythm to
the
this whole
whole
thing.
thing. Yeah. One of the things that I think is a bit of an interesting question here is this voice that comes from heaven, possibly God the Father, says, pay her back. This is in the imperative. This is a command.
Yeah.
Who is he speaking to? Who is being told to pay back the kingdom of Babylon? Again, this harlot, this prostitute. It could be that he is speaking to the Son. And certainly in chapter 19, it is going to be the rider on the white horse, Jesus Christ, the Son who arrives leading the heavenly host, leading the army against her. But if you look at the text and what comes ahead of time, he's speaking to his people, right?
Yeah.
Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins. So the natural reading of this text, it is God the Father speaking to his people, speaking to the faithful people of God. And God the Father says, pay her back, you, my people, pay back Babylon as she herself has paid back others.
Yeah.
Repay her double for her deeds, mix a double portion for her cup in the cup she has mixed. This has some kind of thorny theological implications because it appears as if God is calling on his people to bring about revenge, and yet we are constantly told in the Bible that it is up to the Lord to bring revenge, that we do not bring revenge, but that God brings revenge. Do you have any thoughts on this, who he is commanding? And if he's commanding the church, what does that mean that he is telling the church to take payback against the world for their wickedness?
I think it kind of goes back to, even I think about how the martyrs cry out, right? For a vengeance, for them being persecuted, for dying for their faith. And here it would make sense where God is telling the church, hey, yeah, vengeance is mine, but vengeance is for my people, for y'all, for those ones who've cried out, the blood that has been spilled, the ones who have conquered, you will be able to conquer the beast because of my name that is written on your foreheads and for your forehearts. And that this is the time, because as we mentioned before, that kingdom, the beast itself is in the Satan, in the enemy. And that now God's people, the church, can take back what Satan tried to make for bad, but God turned it in for good and brought it into justice. Yeah.
So when the rider on the white horse arrives in chapter 19, he arrives leading a host from heaven dressed in white. And it is certainly possible to interpret that as an angelic army. But as we have seen, part of the fate of faithful humanity is to join in the armies of heaven.
Yeah.
So it's also conceivable that as a part of God's heavenly host, glorified humans are also involved in that retaking of the human empire. I'll reference Daniel chapter 7 again. In Daniel chapter 7, it talks about how the one like Son of Man defeats the beast and the little horn, which is analogous with the Antichrist and the beast of Revelation. And the Son of Man defeats the beast, but in that process, the holy ones of God, his people, the church, those who are faithful to God, they are raised up as rulers over the earth. And so humans have a part to play in that rulership, in that judgment, in that fighting. Revelation chapter 12, when the dragon goes to war with the armies of heaven, the dragon is cast down to earth. And then it says that the faithful people of earth, they overcame the dragon. It uses military violent language. They overcame the dragon by the power of the blood and the word of their testimony. All of these passages talk about the people of God going to war against the dragon. And I think this passage is actually speaking to the authority that God's faithful people will have to judge these rebel spirits and these rebel humans who have run amok of the earth. We do so under the authority of the Son of God.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, part of the governing of the millennial kingdom is going to be the faithful ones of God. Jesus even tells his disciples that there are going to be these 12 thrones set up. that the disciples will sit in judgment over the nations. And Paul says that the church will judge angels. Could it be that that's exactly what is happening here, is this place of judgment in which now glorified humans are sitting in judgment and bringing about God's execution of his justice against these rebels? I think that may be what we're seeing here, which is why God commands his church, the faithful people, to bring this payback.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say that we should seek revenge in this world.
No.
That's not to say that we take justice into our own hands.
Right.
This is specifically at a time when, following the rider on the white horse, he establishes his kingdom and he rules through his faithful people, as we are now members of his council ruling here on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Moving on to verse 7 and 8. Do you see anything in there you want to mention?
Nope, I do not.
Notice in verse 7, this is the Babylon speaking, the prostitute of Babylon. In her heart she says, I sit as a queen, I am no widow, and mourning I shall never see. There's another one of our threes.
Oh, yeah, I did not catch that.
And notice the similarities between that and what the wicked people say in the church of Laodicea in Revelation 3:17. For you say, I am rich, I have prospered, and I need nothing. So again, a set of three.
Yeah.
These are the only two places in the entire book of Revelation where we have characters speaking in such a way. One is the evil empire of Babylon. The other is the church of Laodicea, which is the most compromised and the most corrupted of the seven churches that John speaks to.
Fascinating.
I think here is a warning that John is giving to the church that, and we've already seen this, come out of her, right?
Right.
Do not join in with the systems of Babylon. The church is also tempted to be a part of this wicked empire that is raised up. And in fact, many churches are. And here he has the church of Laodicea using language and using words almost identical to the words of the whore of Babylon.
Mm. Sorry, everyone. I'm writing my own notes.
That'll bring us to the next section then. This is beginning in verse 9. And remember, I mentioned earlier the kings and the merchants. And I told you this kind of gave you an outline for what was going to happen. Well, now that God the Son and God the Father have spoken and they've declared their judgment, now we're going to get the response of these wicked former confederates of the evil kingdom of Babylon. Verse 9, and the kings of the earth who committed sexual immorality and lived in luxury with her will weep and wail over her when they see the smoke of her burning. They will stand far off in fear of her torment and say, alas, alas, you great city, you mighty city Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come. And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn for her, since no one buys their cargo anymore, cargo of gold, silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet cloth, all kinds of scented wood, all kinds of articles of ivory, all kinds of articles of costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, and sheep, horses and chariots, and slaves, that is, human souls. The fruit of which your soul longed has gone from you, and all your delicacies and all your splendors are lost to you, never to be found again. The merchants of these wares who gained wealth from her will stand far off in fear of her torment, weeping and mourning aloud. Alas, alas for the great city that was clothed with fine linen, in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, with jewels and with pearls. For in a single hour all this wealth has been laid waste. And all the shipmasters and seafaring men, sailors, and all those who trade on the sea stood far off and cried out as they saw the smoke of her burning, what city was like the great city? And they threw dust on their heads as they wept and mourned, crying, alas, alas for the great city, where all who had ships at sea grew rich by her wealth. For in a single hour she has been laid waste. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her. This scene here, we have, I think, an interesting scene because we kind of have the villains sitting there and lamenting over the loss of their wealth and over the loss of their power.
And there's three of them.
So there's these three sets. There's the kings, the merchants, and the seafarers who all sort of show up here. We have a interesting kind of playing out here where you see all these groups who have profited unjustly from the exploitative systems of Babylon.
Yeah.
They are now watching as everything that they've invested in, everything that they've built, everything they've spent their time on has crumbled around them, and they are mourning. And it's interesting because Revelation is a bloody book. We have millions of people dying through the course of the book of Revelation.
Yeah.
And never once do the wicked stop to lament the loss of life. But now that they've lost their money, now that they've lost their capital, all of a sudden they're like, oh, stuff has gotten really bad for us now.
Darn.
Right?
Yeah.
And I also cannot help but reading in this the background of Psalm 82, where God judges the wicked sons of God.
Yeah.
Which, again, I'm not sure who these kings are, but these kings, I think, certainly included in these would be the wicked sons of God. These false gods who set themselves up as rulers, because part of what they're judged for is their exploitation of humans, to the treating of humans, and especially the poor, and especially the vulnerable, treating them with such disregard and treating them with such cruelty. And you could read these verses, these songs of lament, as sort of the sons of God's response to their judgment that God gives in Psalm 82. That's one possibility of you could see those two parallels with one another.
Yeah.
And perhaps John had that in mind when he was writing this. But we can break this down a little bit. First, we have the kings of the earth.
Yeah.
What stands out to you? This is in verses 9 and 10.
I think first off, alas, you'll see that's twice, right? Which is testimony. But as we go through this chapter 18, you'll see it 2 more times, which equals 6. Ta-da! And then, just that you great city, you mighty city, Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come. And I think this is going to be interesting because we're going to see the kings of earth, the merchants, as well as the shipwearers are going to say for a single hour and then fill in the blank. So now we see the judgment has come. We'll see when we get to the merchants, has been laid to waste. And then again, with the shipwearers, for in a single hour, she has been laid to waste. Yeah. Which I think is fascinating.
This little statement here, in a single hour your judgment has come. This is, I think, another clue that what we're reading here chronologically actually occurs after chapter 19 and the arrival of the rider on the white horse. Because the rider on the white horse, that scene shows that in an instant, all the armies of the Antichrist are defeated by the arrival of Jesus Christ. So you can imagine they array all these armies. They get everyone together to fight this great battle. Jesus shows up, and it's over in an instant. And here we see them lamenting the fact that with everything that they spent, all the planning, all the armies they built, Jesus shows up and it's all gone. They said within a single hour. Yeah. Everything that we've spent our entire life preparing for has just been destroyed. Yeah. So again, I think that these are talking about the same event, or rather, the lament of the wicked kings is happening after the arrival of the rider on the white horse in chapter 19, after the destruction of the beast and the tossing out of Satan from the world.
Absolutely.
The next section here that talks about is the merchants. And these merchants have not gotten a whole lot of attention up to this point. It's been focusing on the kings. But now all of a sudden, these merchants come onto the scene. And they have a long list of their cargo, a long list of their goods, that they are very upset because it's all gone in a single instant. The kings seem upset that the armies have been burned up. The merchants are upset that the capitals have been, or the capital goods have been lost and all burned up. And I want to remind everyone, remember, John is writing at a time in which Christians were under enormous pressure by the Roman government, that their participation in the economy was based on idolatry.
Yeah.
They had to make the proper sacrifices to get the guilds to support them in their various towns. They had to pray to the right gods. They had to honor the right ancestors in order to have the blessings of the local priesthood for their businesses to operate. Ultimately, you would have to worship the Emperor of Rome as your personal Lord and Savior in order for you to be protected from the Roman government and to be allowed to participate in the economy.
Yeah.
And so you have these merchants who have sworn their allegiance to the beast. They have taken the mark. They have grown incredibly wealthy because they have sworn their allegiance to the beast. And now all of that is gone in an instant.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think John is also echoing Ezekiel 27 because from 12 to 24, there's a list that's kind of like this that the merchants say. And okay, there's a lot in this list, but if you add it up, there's 28 different things, which 4, remember, can mean seasons or time. So that would be for all time. And then, there are 7 different groups, which 7 would mean completeness. So within this 7, there are the 4 that they completely lost. And something too to note, I think this is really interesting. We talk about there's the gold, the jewels, the fine clothing, the wood, the bronze, the iron. Okay, that all makes sense. But there's something at the end, if you catch it, after cattle and sheep, horses and chariots, and slaves, that is human souls. And I think this is really interesting because you see that, yes, slavery is economic, but here in this, instead of saying slave, sometimes translations, I don't like the ESV's way of saying it, but it could be bodies.
Literally it is. In the Greek it says bodies.
Okay, there you go. Literally means bodies. And I think that's a better description here.
Yeah. Bodies.
That is human souls. That even what God created as ultimately beautiful and different in creation is becoming an economic value, to the point, Criswell said it beautifully, when a people lose the concept of God, no longer is a man anything but an animal. That even a human who is different, he was made different, right? Like Adam was literally made from the dust of the earth, breathed in, right? Separate from the animals, separate from the plants, everything else he created is now associated as himself, as human being, as an animal itself. That even the human soul, what God created differently to join in union, is now considered a part of this economic value of slavery.
Yeah. And notice these merchants make this list in order of most valuable to least valuable to them.
Yeah.
They start by talking about the gold, the silver, the jewels, the pearls. And they get to the end, they're talking about the cattle, the sheep, and the horses. And the very last thing they mention are the vulnerable humans who have been enslaved because of their economic schemes. Yeah.
Which isn't that sad too? What God considered most important, the enemy considers the less of value.
Yeah. We were talking about off our recording earlier, this reference here, bodies, that is human souls. I agree with you 100% that the reference to the human souls here is making it undoubtable that what these people treated like cattle are humans who were made in God's image.
Yes.
And so there is this tragic way that they have treated humans as property rather than as the image bearers of God. But I also wonder if this is not speaking to some level of magical or technological dominance that in this dystopian future, this future beastly kingdom, that they had some sort of a powerful slavery over even human souls. Whether that's through drug usage, we've all seen people whose souls are enslaved by powerful psychedelic drugs. But for whatever reason, they had this sort of economic claim upon human souls, and now they've lost that claim because the Son of God has appeared and rescued his people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything you want to mention there about the song of woe that they sing in either verse 14 or verse 16?
Yes. Alas, alas. There you go. Circle that again. Your little set of two. And then here we have again how Babylon, it was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet with gold and jewels and pearls. For in single hour all this wealth has been laid to rest. That all those things that make an empire so great are now completely demolished, destroyed, never to be seen again.
Yeah. And again, the kings seem upset that all their armies have been destroyed. The merchants seem upset that all their wealth has been lost.
Well, they can't even trade anymore. Yeah. So then they lose all their information and
And don't feel too bad for them, because remember, they have built their entire portfolio based off of the exploitation of other people.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
They have cut other people out of the system, and they've said, no, we're going to profit over the wickedness of the beast. And so now all that has been taken away from them.
Well, and isn't that, let's be real, in history, that's what merchants did.
That's right.
They would do whatever they can to survive. So if that meant going with the most popular, going with the least, that they didn't have to be, guaranteed to do debt. They were going to manipulate, lie, do whatever to be able to continue their social value.
Yeah. So we get a third set of characters, and this one is even more obscure than that of the merchants. Now we get the shipmasters, the seafaring men, the sailors, and all those who trade on the sea. Now, this group is a very diverse group, whereas the first one we had the kings and we had the merchants. That's fairly clear. The shipmasters, these would be the captains of the ships, the owners of the ships, those who are running the trade ventures on the ship. Seafaring men probably refers to just people who ride on on ships. They are tourists. They are the people who take the ships. And the sailors and those who trade on the sea, these are those who work the ships. And so we really have a whole ecosystem here in verse 17 of basically everyone associated with ship trade. The only thing that unites them is the trade of the ship and the trade on the waters.
Yeah.
And their entire business has been laid to waste because Babylon, the epicenter of economics in the world, has fallen apart, and so they have nothing to trade. They have nothing to go out upon the seas and do. What do you make of this third group that John lists here with their woes that they're crying, their lament?
Yeah, I think, isn't it interesting that, okay, so we see the mourning, we see them lament, but this group actually puts dust on their heads, which, okay, reminder, when people fasted or there was mourning or crying throughout the land, people would put on that like a goat skin that was itchy, and they would put dust or the ashes on top of their head. And here, I think it's interesting that the shipmasters, they throw dust on their heads as they weep and mourn, while the merchants and the kings never do that, as we see in John, which I find fascinating.
It is very interesting. This seems very random to us as kind of Western readers. One thing that I wonder if isn't in the background here, the sea, of course, we talked about this, the sea is the place of chaos.
Right.
And oftentimes the sea is viewed as the force that opposes God's will, and that God himself must calm, God himself must subdue in order for life to exist.
Yeah.
Oftentimes creation accounts are described as God driving back the sea and holding back the sea. So sort of creation accounts in both Genesis and Job, they give this idea that if it were not for God holding back the seas would swallow up all life on earth. So you have these people whose entire livelihood is based upon the sea, and the sea is viewed as this rather wicked thing, this place of chaos, this thing that must be stilled in order for life to flourish. there could be something there to the background of that.
Yeah.
In other words, humans who have built their careers on the back of wickedness by using fallenness and wickedness in order to achieve more and more. Much like the kings before the flood, who exploited the forbidden knowledge of the Watchers in order to increase their kingdoms and increase their influence over the earth. In the same way, these seafarers, these men who ride the sea, they have taken advantage of the evil and the wickedness of the world to enrich themselves. Here, they say, in a single hour, she has been laid to waste. So 3 references now to the suddenness of Babylon's destruction, right? And for them, it echoes it, but it's a little bit different. Now they seem to be referring back to the fact that what once was this beautiful, prosperous, luxurious city has now been turned into this wasteland.
Yeah.
And that's what they are lamenting over, is the loss of the beauty, the loss of the culture that Babylon once represented.
Absolutely. And then you'll see in verse 20, another set of 3. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and your saints and apostles and prophets. For God has given judgment for you against her.
Yeah. So again, I find this a very fascinating set of scriptures, especially since, if I'm correct, what makes the most sense is to interpret this as a lament that is being sung after the arrival of the rider on the white horse and the great throne judgment and the arrival of the millennium. Which means when Jesus comes, not everybody is happy about it.
Yeah.
The people who have profited off of Babylon, they are still they are very upset that their cash cow has been slaughtered.
Yeah.
Essentially. Now, again, we'll talk about this more when we get to Revelation 20 and we talk about the millennium and things like this. But this at least suggests to me that the initiation of the millennial kingdom that Jesus Christ will bring, there is still some degree of rebellion and hatred towards God's kingdom that exists in the remnants of the beast. To use Daniel 7 language, the 3 previous beasts that still exist on the earth even after the 4th beast is destroyed.
Yeah.
This perhaps provides some context for the Gog and Magog rebellion that occurs at the end of the millennium in chapter 20, which for me personally is one of the most challenging and most difficult parts of squaring a premillennial view with Revelation, is why you seemingly have this rebellion that looks almost the exact same as the fall of Babylon, but is occurring after the 1,000 years, just like this one that occurs before the 1,000 years. So again, we'll get there later, but it does make some sense for this Gog of Magog rebellion to take place if you still have these vestiges of the beast that are left even during the millennial kingdom. And here we see them mourning over what they have lost. Okay, again, not upset at the loss of human life,
right?
Upset at the loss of their power and influence over the world. Yeah. Okay, anything else you want to say before I move on to verse 21?
Nope, you go for it.
So 21, we're now getting another start of a section, which will be another song or another chorus that is sung. Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, "So will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will be found no more. And the sound of the harpists and musicians, of flute players and trumpeters will be heard in you no more. And a craftsman of any craft will be found in you no more. And the sound of the mill will be heard in you no more. The sound of the lamp will shine in you no more, and the voice of bridegroom and bride will be heard in you no more. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, and all the nations were deceived by your sorcery. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints, and all who had been slain on the earth." rounding out this final judgment oracle that's given.
Mhm.
So we started with an angel that
Yep.
might be the Son of God. We're now ending with an angel with this final summary statement of the fall of Babylon. Figuring the fall of Babylon is the taking of this great millstone and tossing into the sea. This is a reminder in my mind of the trumpets, I believe, where wormwood is cast to the earth and
Yeah.
thrown into the sea.
Mhm.
And again, possibly an indication that these are not sequential events, but they are all describing the same set of events from a different perspective
Yeah.
each time. So what are your notes here on these final few verses of chapter 18?
Well, the mighty angel taking up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea. Jeremiah 51:63 will mention that in his book as well. And then, okay, first off, this imagery is beautifully well done, because ultimately what John is saying is, think about a city that does well, right? If you were going in with your cargo, you're going to need your horse and buggy, and came in, you would hear craftspeople, right? You would hear the crowd, you would hear laughter, you would hear music, and yet there is this cacophony of silence that's all throughout the land.
Mm-hmm.
There is no more. It is definitely a wasteland. And so we see lots of different like sets of numbers here, but that no more, it says it 6 times. And then the sound of the harpist, the musician, the harpists and musicians, that's 1, sorry. The flute and the trumpeters, that's 3, right? As there was found the blood of the prophets, of the saints, and all who've been slain in the mouth. 3 equals 6. And then also the sounds of the city, right? There is no more music. There is no more craftspeople. The meal is not working, as well as there is no voice of the bride and the bridegroom any longer.
Mm-hmm.
It is just a, like, I would think like a room where, like, there is no sound, there is nothing except just dead silence.
Mm-hmm.
And that can just give chills, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I was thinking, there's that article that says, like, they'll give you $10,000 if you can stay in this room that's, like, filled and takes out sound for 24 hours. And people cannot do it because they cannot stand the absolute silence that's in there. And yet we're going to see that with the fall of Babylon.
I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
It would be lovely. It would be great.
Really?
Oh, it would
You
be
would
fantastic.
be fine for 24 hours?
I would love that. This is one of the things that's very interesting here. Is we've read language like this before in Revelation.
Yes. Uh-huh.
At the end of the seals, at the end of the trumpets, at the end of the bowls, there's always this final statement of judgment about the desolation of the earth.
Yes.
The old order has been completely wiped away.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting this very similar language from a different perspective once again. And I was correct. The hurling of the great rock into the ocean.
Yeah.
We get that from the language of the trumpets. This is Revelation chapter 8. Revelation 8, verse 8. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and 1/3 of the sea became blood. 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star of heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on the 1/3 of the rivers and the springs of the water. The name of the star is Wormwood. 1/3 of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the water because it had been made bitter. The traditional way of reading Revelation is to read these as a sequence of events.
Right.
But you can read this as a description of the same events from different perspectives that repeats itself multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a case where perhaps, sure, the flaming mountain of the trumpets, maybe that's a meteor that falls way before the fall of Babylon here in chapter 18. Or when the angel speaks about hurling the millstone into the water.
Yeah.
And whenever the seafarers lament the loss of the seas and the loss of their prophets, maybe this is describing the exact same events that the trumpets were describing, just from a different perspective.
Yeah.
These are all oracles. These are all judgments describing the same events. and describing the fullness of God's judgment against Babylon and against this evil empire that exists here.
Yeah.
Verse 24, this stood out to me. It says, and in her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints and of all who have been slain on the earth. Especially that statement there, the blood of the prophets and the saints. This is definitely going to be what individuals who view Babylon as representing Jerusalem, that's going to be one of the verses they're going to point to.
Oh.
Because no one killed more prophets than Jerusalem. This is actually something Jesus talks about, right? When he's talking about his woes for the city of Jerusalem, the week of his crucifixion, he talks about how your ancestors killed the prophets, and he in many of his parables he talks about the prophets who were killed as a result of the wickedness of Jerusalem. So there's people who are going to view that verse and say, well, that's where you get Jerusalem from, because Jerusalem was the city that largely rejected the prophets and persecuted them and sought to destroy them. That's not necessary if we view Babylon again as this universal system of demonic and human wickedness. John is not talking about one particular time in history. He's talking about all history and the tendency that humans have to depend upon fallen sons of God to establish these kingdoms in rebellion against God.
Yeah.
And eventually that is going to magnify itself into this one ultimate beastly kingdom, which will be defeated by God. But this is a compulsion that resides deep in the human heart and has ever since the fall of Adam.
Yeah.
It's part of our rebellious nature.
Yeah.
And it's part of what Jesus Christ came to fix in us, was this deep rebellion and this violence that we have against him.
Yeah.
The end result of rebellion, even if you profit for a small part of time, the end result is utter destruction and desolation. And that is now being pictured and represented by the destruction of Babylon here in chapter 18.
Yeah. Well, I also thought, I thought about even the parable, the 10 virgins that Jesus talks about, how the oil in their lamps and how the some already did it while others waited. And that's in the same thing of even here, the voice of the bridegroom is no longer there. That it is, as we have seen time and time again, even with the Revelation, with the seals, the trumpets, the woes, all those different things, there was still time to repent. And here to the very end of the harlot, who's the harlot Scarlet, as well as the fall of Babylon, judgment is here and there is no more. And the voice of the bridegroom is only there now for the ones who do know his call, who have their names written in the book of life.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what are your applications for chapter 18?
I think ultimately, I love how you said, I think just as we've been talking about Revelation, to just how bad we are with assuming things. You even preached that on Sunday about assumptions and stuff, and how even with Revelation, like I said, I think a lot of people take this sequential view of it all, but as you can see, it kind of just all goes together, and that ultimately God is going to bring justice in the land. We'll see that, the evil will not overcome any longer, because Jesus on the white horse will come, as we're going to see in Revelation chapter 19. But how many times have our hearts, and we're all guilty of that, where we have allowed idolatry, other things to come into play, except for Jesus being the one and only. And that's because of our rebellious heart. It's because I go back to Judges a lot, that we all want to be our own king and queen and make what is right in our own eyes, our own rules, our own places, our own kingdom, when ultimately we were designed, as well as have purpose, to know Jesus and to make him known. And that's why we're only here on this planet, is to have this beautiful continual relationship with him, but then also to spread that message to every other person around the earth.
Yeah. I think my application for chapter 18 goes back to that statement that God makes to his people at the beginning of the chapter, which is, come out of her, my people.
Yeah.
He is calling his church to not participate in this fallen world system of Babylon.
Yeah.
And again, Kelsan and I believe that Babylon represents a very real empire in the end of days. But the spirit of Babylon is always with us, just like the spirit of the Antichrist is always present in this world and will be until Jesus Christ returns. John's original audience, they would have seen every single day overt attempts by the beast to subvert their loyalty to Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Again, to participate in the Roman economic system, you had to bend your knees to the Roman gods and the Roman emperor.
Yeah.
You put yourself, your family, and your business at risk by being a Christian in the Roman Empire. They experienced incredible pressure. And so John, through the book of Revelation, is encouraging them and saying, as difficult as it is, do not be tempted by the ways of this world. Do not be tempted to bed the harlot, to participate in this idolatrous worldly system, but stay faithful to God.
Yeah.
The world and the demons are better at hiding that in today's world, but that pressure is no less there.
Right.
We still live in a world in which the pressure to compromise, the pressure to cut corners, the pressure to ignore God and bend our knee to the satanic systems of this world are all around us. You are constantly in a battle for your soul, constantly in a battle to maintain righteousness in this world. And whether you're at school and it's about what your friends are doing around you, or you're in the business world and you know that if you cut these corners and if you do these things, you can make a big profit, or you're in the political world and you got to, say the right thing and do the right thing to keep these donors sending money your way. The pressure to compromise is all over the place. And God says, come out of her. Yeah. Don't participate. Right. It reminds me of that theme that Jesus gives his disciples, where you are in the world, but not of the world. Yeah. Right? God has placed us here, and he's placed us here for a purpose. Yeah. But if we participate in the system of Babylon, then we will also experience the judgment and the wrath that falls upon Babylon. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And that's kind of what John is saying here. You want to benefit in the short term by participating in this wicked demonic system. Understand that long term, there is suffering and wrath for all those who turn their back on God. Yeah. I was thinking of Romans 12:2, the don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed with the renewing of your mind. Yeah. You may be able to prove what is true. Yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of Theology with Coffee.
If you have any questions, comments, or prayer requests, please reach out to us at theologywcoffee@gmail.com. Again, theologywcoffee@gmail.com.
We'll see you next time.
Bye!